Thanks for coming along. I know James earlier said that because we're in a university setting, he had to redact some of his talk title. I didn't get that memo. So I've just gone with it. Everything's fucked and we're all going to die. I swear a lot. Bit of sweary words in this. Sorry in advance. I will do the usual who am I that you usually get with these talks. Michael Whitehead. Says it there, says it down there, says it on the schedule, says it everywhere. Hi everybody. I am a cybersecurity engineer. I currently work at University of Leeds. I work within our consultancy, architecture and engineering team, which is a non-operational team. So we do a lot of the consultancy and things within the university. However, I have previously worked in threat and vulnerability management, as well as being an assistant administrator, doing some analyst work, threat intel. I've worn many hats. You can find me on Blue Sky. That used to have Twitter on there, but I have removed myself because it's toxic. Find me on LinkedIn as well. That's pretty much the only two places. I'll do a quick overview of the talk today. Everything's fucked. Yep, we're all going to die. Where we're going wrong. Policies are cool. Documentation rocks. Love documentation. Playing chess with death. This is a cool picture. 2024, 25, the year of not the Linux desktop, but the Linux piss take. Why geopolitics does matter in our industry, and some key takeaways. So, everything's fucked. Yes. Thanks for coming. Q&A. Okay. I'll elaborate a little. I know the question that you'll probably be asking is, why though? There's a few reasons for that, in my opinion. Most organisations only have one designated vulnerability management tool, if they're lucky. Larger, really big organisations will have a few more. Most only have one. It doesn't cover all products. Threat hunting and what I like to call vulnerability stumbling doesn't always get good press. I have seen this myself. I've seen it from friends and colleagues in the industry who have come across some really cool stuff, but it doesn't go down too well. A lot of people will, I've heard it myself, so Michael, stop touching shit. You can get bad press just for trying to do the good thing. One example was someone I know, probably a lot of you know, Daniel Card. I put out a tweet just asking, does anybody know anybody who works at a specific council? And I did. So give me some information on what he'd found. There's a box open with RDP enabled externally to the internet, NLA not enabled, so it was exploitable. I reached out to who I knew at the council. Took a little while to get a response from someone who could do something about it. Rather than being really thankful, oh thanks so much, that was really helpful, that's saved our day. So, who the fuck are you? So, just try to help. It doesn't always get good press, but it doesn't mean it's a bad thing to do. Management focus a lot of the time that I've seen on the wrong things in vulnerability management. We'll cover it quite a bit later on, but essentially I have seen a lot of focus on numbers of vulnerability rather than impact of vulnerability. I've seen management teams say, well, we've got 5,000 of this vulnerability, let's get rid of them rather than the 2 critical publicly facing RCEs that we've got. The 5,000 was pings enabled. So that's why everything's fucked. And are we all going to die? Yes. Thank you. And you'll all know what the question is going to be. Why though? Yes. Passage of time is the answer. Couple of things. There's more people out there wanting fame, power, money. People always want to have their name against a really cool hack. Power and money kind of go hand in hand. If you look at just recently, North Korea has just managed to get away 1.2 billion from a crypto hack. That will help likely fund their nuclear capabilities, goes with their power. There's more vulnerabilities being released than working hours per month. I'll go over the numbers on that later on, but with a small team of vulnerability management analysts and managers, there's just too many vulnerabilities to actually go through without having some sort of context around it. And then your attack surfaces all tend to increase over time, whether that's because the business decides to change their investment strategies, or they expand, they have mergers and acquisitions. Your surface will change, and you're also going to be starting to bring in more suppliers, more vendors. So it's not just your own attack surface that you're looking at, it's your suppliers as well. So we're all going to die, yes, but not because everything's fucked. They aren't mutually exclusive. Where we're going wrong. There is an over-reliance on scanning our environments to tell us what to do. And it is reactive, it's not proactive. So, again, I've seen this a lot where people will wait until patch Tuesday's out, they'll wait until their vulnerability management scanner has a detection, and then they'll go and scan their estate. Detections can take quite a bit of time to actually be released by vendors. I have seen them, even for patch Tuesday, have taken up to a week. One vulnerability I've seen within F5 networks, their VPN solution, one product still has a vulnerability that's been open for about 3 years, and they don't have a correct detection for it. So if you are relying on that to assess your environment, you're not getting a true picture. Again, I've spoke about it previously, focusing on big numbers versus big risk reduction. The numbers, yeah, that might look good for a pretty graph. It's not doing anything good for your actual threat posture. And NVD isn't the Holy Grail, it's not the Bible that you think it is. Again, I'll talk about that. So, vulnerability scanners do not know about all vulnerabilities. And it's worrying quite how few they actually do cover. Some of the numbers are slightly out of date from when I was writing the slides, but per the NVD database, there's about 283,000 vulnerabilities in there. Tenable covers about 80,000. They say 97. I dispute that. Rapid7, with their Insight VM product, covers roughly about the same. Their marketing doesn't really say how many they cover. Qualys covers around about 87,000. They say over 35,000. Don't know why they're doing themselves a disservice. But yeah, stop reporting numbers of vulnerabilities. It's not a good metric for us to be working with. As I say, I have seen multiple different vulnerabilities out there that have, you need so much context around them to actually know which ones are the ones that are a risk, which ones you can put to one side, think about it on a rainy day. So, yes, we've got the NVD, National Vulnerability Database. It is maintained by NIST in America. That is pretty much what all of our security tooling looks at. It's derived from the CVE database. They do a bit of enrichment on what they provide. They assign the CPEs and things like that as well. But it's not the only one. We've got the CNNVD, which is a Chinese vulnerability database. We have the CNVD, which is another Chinese vulnerability database. Why have one when you can have two? We've got the DSTD, which is the Data Security Threat Database, which is the Russian equivalent. And we have the JVN, which is the Japan Vulnerability Notes. We, in our tool sets in the West, tends to be NIST, tends to be the CVE database that we look at. These databases are wildly different. Some will encompass the CVE information, but they also have their own. So, for example, CNN and the CNNVD and the CNVD contain more vulnerabilities than the NVD. They've got a quicker turnaround for submissions to entry into the database. Is one thing that NVD has a real issue with currently, and they have had for several years, is there's too much coming into them to actually assess and get inputted into the database. They keep saying that they're going to make improvements, yet to really see that coming to fruition. As I say, a lot of tooling focuses on just the NVD CVE database, not other countries. Perfect example for that would be, when is the last time you've seen CNVD 2023-53909? I don't think apart from looking myself, you don't really see it. You don't see the JVNVU references. These are ones that I have found, from memory when I've found them, they don't actually exist within the NVD database. So what you can often find is software which is focused within a specific country or region. They will have more detections for that than the NVD database will, which means that if you are a multinational company, you may not be seeing those vulnerabilities that you actually have in your estate, but people over there are. Who doesn't love documentation? Perfect example for documentation, before I start on this, I put that image in maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago on a very basic slide deck template. A couple of days ago I came back to it and was like, why the fuck did I put that there? Had no notes. Didn't document it. Should eat my own dog food. I like to think about documentation this way. If you think about the 3 little pigs, you've got the pig in the house of straw. You don't have any documentation. You've not got your policies, you don't have standards, you don't have guidance, guidelines. Your house is going to come down. Then you've got the pig in the house made of wood. Maybe you've got a couple of policies in place, but you've got no standards to back them up. You don't have guidance for how to actually do what you're asking them to do. Then finally you've got your house made of brick. Fantastic, you've got policies in place, you've got standards, you've got guidance. The house still is vulnerable, it still can come down, but it's much less likely for that to happen. The thing is with policies, you can pat yourself in the back once you get your policies in place. It's all perfect. But policies are ever evolving. It's not just set and forget. You do need to make sure that you are constantly updating, because regulations change, best practice changes, the threat landscape changes. So your policies and standards, your documentation has to reflect that. I'll leave that up just so you can have a little read, because I don't like reading out bits of text to people. So, it's a usual movie trope that you see in movies and literature, that you play chess with death to try and get a longer life. That's kind of what vulnerability management is, if you think about it. You're constantly trying to catch a break, trying to get past one thing to get to the next, just prolong the time that you've got to actually do it without there being anything that actually crops up. Why would you panic about having a vulnerability in a product you don't have? Why would you really necessarily worry about a vulnerability in a product that you do have, but it's air-gapped off? It's the context that's key. The problem with that is you have to have an accurate CMDB. You have to know what products you actually have in your environment. If you don't know that, it's next to impossible for you to actually do that assessment and remediation. It will take time to assess what vulnerabilities are coming in, find out what's actually bad for you, pick out the really bad nuggets in the avalanche of shit. And it is an avalanche. So this is a graph from 2 years ago. It was from F5 Networks, and it was their projection on how many CVEs would be published to NVD each week. So from around about 2016, end of 2016 onward, you can see is a quite high projection. They had expected that there would be 500 CVEs released per week. We hit that last year. So we're already going much further than what that prediction was. Last year we had an average of 108 CVEs per week and just over 40,000 CVEs for the year. If you don't have that CMDB, you don't know which ones are your focus. Even if you have your bread and butter things like your things that you have on your perimeter, your firewalls, your VPN gateways, your RDP gateways, things like that, get your tier 1 things in order, then you can understand where you need to focus your attention, your time. Now, I did mention earlier that there's not enough working hours in the day to do this if you don't have that in place. So, quick numbers, 40-hour working week, 500 vulnerabilities a week. That gives you 4.8 minutes per CVE to read it, assess it, understand it, pass it on to a remediation team, get it resolved, validate. You're not doing it in 5 minutes. It's days worth of work, weeks potentially. So you do have to get that. So going back to this, often you'll think the Hollywood hacker, where as soon as they get initial access, they've got their hoodie up, they're in, typing away their commands, and your whole estate comes down, crashing down. It's not really always like that. I have seen it happen where they do breach, they do get initial access, and for the first half hour, it's, who am I? CD, oh shit, it's a Linux box. I can't do LS. They're just fumbling their way around. So even if there is a breach, it's not necessarily fact that it's going to be instantaneous, that they get what they're in for. What you do have to do though is get your high value targets, like I say, your VPN gateways, your Citrix, dare I say it. Make sure those things are patched, up to date, as quickly as possible as soon as they're released. and make sure your management planes are not publicly accessible. It's something you see so often, and it's why there's so many massive breaches, is because there's a vulnerability in a product that you can only access via the management plane of that product. But people do it anyway because they like the convenience of being able to access it from home without needing to jump through hoops. People get lazy, makes it easier for hackers. So yeah, what I would say though is, when I say don't get your management, secure your management plane, remediate this, fix that, you're not doing that yourself. Put down the screwdrivers. The role is vulnerability management, it's not vulnerability fixing. Your role in vulnerability management tends to be, I like to call it coloured pencil. You are writing up reports, you're drawing pretty graphs, you are telling people where your risk is, how to bring that down. You draw a graph goes up bad, graph goes down good. Easy way for people to know. Yeah, and Sel did speak about this earlier on her talk of bluff. It's something that I use all the time, and I've always used it for my report writing, is just lead with the facts. You don't need to tell them that, oh, we've found this CVE which allows for a directory traversal to capture credentials from a login page. Executive C-suite management don't really care about that. They want to know what the risk is, how bad will it be if it happens, how do we fix it, what's it going to cost. That's what we really need to be leading with. And then after that, you can then fill in the details for the remediation teams to actually go do their jobs and fix it. You can handhold them through the process to make sure that they can do it securely, get it remediated, get it validated, and then close it off. And that's kind of where the whole bluff suggestion comes from. We do a lot of KY3P, know your third party, but at times you do need to know your first party. So you have to know your management, you need to know your audience. Internally, it's not always going to be easy just to speak tech speak. You do need to explain it like you're 5. So there's that example. An application is vulnerable to SQL injection due to improper input sanitization. They're going to glaze over at that. Critical flaw in our system allows attackers to steal sensitive customer data, leading to financial loss and reputational damage. Those are the key words that they want to know. Steal data, financial loss, reputational damage. Now, this will be a controversial one-ish. Going back to the figures that we had for CVEs being released each year, and it was predicted that it would be 2020, by the end of 2025 we would reach that 500 a week, and we reached that last year. A couple of reasons for that. One, people are getting better at detecting vulnerabilities and finding them in systems. But also, we have the Linux kernel team. So, within the world of CVEs, you have CVE numbering authorities, CNAs. Tends to be larger organisations, your Googles, your Microsofts, your Red Hats, things like that, who will be able to assign a CVE number to a vulnerability. Linux kernel team kind of got a bit annoyed with that because they wanted to be able to do their own. Other people were doing it for them. They wanted to take control, take handle of it. Normally, when you're a CNA, you will make sure you assess that vulnerability quite well before you actually release it for a number. It can then be disputed, but for the most part, you do a bit of due diligence. Not the Linux kernel team. What they did instead was decide to do things their own way. So, I'll give you a timeline on that. 2020, 120 CVEs in the Linux kernel. 2021, 162, slight uptake. 2022, 309, fairly sharp spike. 2023 kind of plateaued again, roughly about that number. February 2024, the Linux kernel team became a CNA. In 2024, it was 3,182 CVEs related to the Linux kernel. 2025, as of the 9th, 1,266. That's ridiculous. The vast majority of these aren't realistically security vulnerabilities. They will relate to vulnerabilities in their code. They're not translatable to exploitable vulnerabilities. I'll move away from that. Geopolitics. I think a few people have kind of touched on this before today as well. And it does matter. Ish. There's a lot of things happening in the world just now that will impact on our ability to assess vulnerabilities, to do our jobs really. Whether it's in VM, whether it's in threat intel, whether it's SOC, engineering, whatever. It's going to cause us problems. NIST announced roughly 130 layoffs. CISA, 500 layoffs, and just past couple of days, $10 million cut annually from their budget for ISAC funding. If you don't know, ISAC is an information sharing sort of team that will allow cross industry and cross geography sharing of information. We've got the Apple ADP, the advanced data protection scheme that Apple have, the highest tier of their encryption for their devices, which is now no longer available in the UK because of the UK government wanting to basically have carte blanche to say we need access because we have a warrant, regardless of what that warrant actually entails. The FBI have their responsibly managed encryption, which is kind of touching on the same as what the UK government are wanting. Is FBI want to be able to access encrypted data with a backdoor. And you've got the China data security law, which an interesting one from a vulnerability perspective. If you are a Chinese national and you find a vulnerability, you've got 48 hours to privately disclose that to the government. Then they will assess themselves, and then it will go into one of their databases. But that data has to go to the government first. And we do know that the Chinese government does use some of these vulnerabilities that are found before they are known about publicly, and then they get burned. They will use them. What can we do? We can use the known exploited vulnerabilities database. Kev. Good old Kev. It's not his database. That database is run by CISA, and it is a database of, as you'd expect, exploits that are known, vulnerabilities are known to be exploited publicly at this moment in time. So you can then use that to try and push those ones further up in your priority risk-based vulnerability scoring. What you can often see, and I said before, with the risk-based versus numbering, like numbers of vulnerabilities, most of these vulnerability management tool sets have risk-based scoring available already in place. You just need to use it. You've got Tenable's got VPR, Rapid7's got VPS, I think it is, Qualys has got TrueScore. They've all got their own kind of way of doing it, and they weight those scorings based on, again, if it's been exploited in the wild, how old it is, what your tiering is of your systems that you have in place. So you can use weighted temporal scoring and things like that as well. Threat hunting. I know I said it doesn't get good press. It's not a reason not to do it. I do it. I like doing it. It's fun. Like, we all do CTFs and things like that. Why not do it for real? But don't go and exploit the stuff that you find. Because then you're a bad guy. Custom scan modules. So, going back to the fact that scanners don't have detections for all vulnerabilities, a lot of them you can create your own custom scan modules. And if you have some niche software that it's for medical research, or it is biochemistry or astrophysics, chances are the vendors aren't going to be having detections for them. But they might be quite well used in your field. And if they're quite well used in your field and you do research work, chances are other nations will want that information off you because it saves them doing the work. If you create your own custom scan modules, you then have that visibility within your product as well. You can just get a wider picture. And CMDB, know your environment, know what you have. If you work in VM, even if you don't have a CMDB, over time you will learn what your environment's like, the little nuances, but you're severely hampered if you don't have that database in place to refer to. Batter through this quite quickly. Yes, takeaways. Vulnerability management is hard. It's time consuming, it is stressful at times, it can be hard to engage with the other parties that are responsible for fixing things. You don't really get to put your feet up. Short-term thinking is long-term pain. Don't just think about the latest vulnerability that you see on a couple of machines. Log4j, for example, you could be looking at, oh, we've got 5 machines that have Log4j, let's fix them, get that out of the estate. While you're doing that, the rest of the place is burning because you've got bigger fish to fry. Think about the whole environment, think about the long game. Help management make the right choices. So this is where we help them and move them away from the thinking of necessarily what they think they need to know. It's our job to tell them what they need to know. They will have different risk matrices that they use to assess risk within the organisation. They might lend quite well to numbers of things happening or numbers of things existing, number of events. We need to, as security professionals, lean them away from that and give them the right information, what the impacts are, how big the threat landscape is for this vulnerability. It's our jobs to actually give them that information. And the unknowns will bite you. I keep harping on about it, but if you don't know what systems you have, how do you know what's vulnerable? You might have an entire subset of your environment that is focusing on a particular type of work that you don't really know about that the rest of the business is doing. From that, if you don't have that visibility, you've got a huge area that is potentially quite high risk. And surprisingly, I usually waffle on for a lot longer than that, but that's me.